been listed on the International Accounting Bulletin ranking of global accounting networks over the past 3 years. Sustainability is in our DNA. It is at the heart of everything we do. TGS means Think Global Sustainability. That is why we support the principles of the United Nations Global Compact on Human Rights, Labor, Environment, and Anti-Corruption. Our 24% steady growth reached global revenues of more than $250 million. With 70 member firms in 59 countries, 260 hubs, and more than 4,300 professionals, at TGS, we are prepared to give an active response to a constantly changing environment. A multidisciplinary Americas team is in constant growth with the objective of providing our clients with methods and processes of the highest international level. The TGS team has a specialized vision of their local and regional needs to provide more precise solutions. It's the right partner to provide more accurate solutions. The quality of our audit, tax, legal, advisory, and outsourcing services are assured using cutting-edge technology incorporated into our cybersecurity, digital transformation, and automation services, and our regional and global quality control tests, which are performed every year. The firms in the Americas offer you quality local solutions to global problems, to more than 1,000 clients in the main countries, and our long-term commitment to sustainable business development in the region.
Thank you, Lorena. I'm going to return to my sharing. The idea of that video is to not only talk about the firm in Peru, but also the region. And why is that? Is that Peru is a big country in the region. But if you see the region as a whole, there are a lot of countries that just disappear, and people focus on North America, Mexico, Canada, and Brazil. So it's the idea is to show you a little bit more about Peru. Peru is one of the biggest, aside of obviously the countries I mentioned, is very important in the development with Chile and also with Colombia. Not minimizing Bolivia or Ecuador, nothing like that, but in terms of GDP, that we are going to go and see and talk a little bit about that. So, Peruvian numbers. Let me try this again and see if I can get the video going. Oh, here it is. Now I found the box. Do you see my screen?
Yes, but it's
perfect.
Yes, it's not yet the video.
The video not yet?
No, we don't have the video. We just have an image of Peru.
Ah, okay. Now?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna let you run.
Welcome to Peru, a country where in recent years we only hear news about economic and social inequality, the huge unemployment rate due to confinement, the scourge of corruption and political instability, as well as the population's continuous protests. Even Peruvian soccer suffered a crisis with the possible relegation to the second division of one of the most popular Peruvian soccer teams. In the last few years, we have seen things that hopefully we will not see again. A country divided by the presidential elections, with friends and family members on opposite sides. Nevertheless, in the middle of so much uncertainty, We also saw the creativity and solidarity of the Peruvian people. Welcome to a community that sees the glass as half full, where companies make the best decision to succeed and even take the leap to a global position. Did you know that national production increased by 47.8% in 2020, positioning 37 products in the ranking of top exporters? And that despite the economic situation, 11 regions showed growth in exports, and that more than 2,300 companies exported products to 128 markets? Did you know that in 2020 we were first in blueberry and quinoa exports in the world? And we took the second place in avocado, asparagus, chestnuts, and organic coffee exports. And even Nespresso started buying our coffee. As if the aforementioned were not enough, our cacao won 15 medals, and our pisco obtained 40 awards. Furthermore, we're leaders in alpaca fiber, exporting to 58 countries. Even Hollywood chose us to film the new Transformers movie in Peru. Yes, the Autobots are coming to Machu Picchu. Do you remember the soccer team that was relegated? Well, they returned to the first division stronger than ever, gaining new sponsors and further strengthening their legendary brand. But we do not only have soccer players. Did you know that 35 Peruvian athletes participated in the main disciplines of the Olympic Games in Tokyo? We were also considered the best green destination in the South American edition of the World Travel Awards, and the best chef in the world is Peruvian. Not to mention our brands with operations throughout the region: Big Cola, Alicorp, Gloria, Belcorp, and Pardo's Chicken. That's right, Peruvian companies led by creative, sustainability-conscious professionals are doing this and so much more. Ironically, despite our political uncertainties, we have the most stable economy in the region, and we are considered one of the best countries in the region for foreign investment. Major brands trust us. Products from Oreo, Field, Ritz, Trident, Halls, and Tang are now produced in Peru with renewable energy. More than 235,000 companies were created in Peru in 2020. Peru is the fastest growing country in the region at a rate of 9.6%. And although the figures were discouraging, in just over 6 months, we administered 16.17 million doses of vaccines. And during the crisis, heroes emerged everywhere. How can we forget the angel of oxygen, or the cab driver who used to have an oxygen tank inside his cab when transporting those infected to the hospital? Although there are data and realities that we do not like, this is the time to unite and push together to leave behind the crises and seize the opportunities. And here is TGS Sarrio Asociados to assist companies in making the best decisions and accompany them in their growth. There is still a lot of work to do, but we are optimistic that we will leave the crises behind, and together we will add more successes to Peru. Audit, tax, legal, advisory, outsourcing.
I hope you like the video. Returning to the presentation. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, it's great.
Perfect. Okay. Great. So an optimistic video. Obviously, we are in the middle of some backlash, still politician, but as history has taught us, this will pass. And at the end of the day, we have a country, we have people, we have families, we have businesses, evolving. So a little bit of Peru, population, 33 million, inflation rate. We are not we are as the same countries in the world. We are being hit by the inflation rate. We are trying to manage it. As you can see, it's not as high as other countries, including developed countries. We're trying to keep it controlled. It's hard, but unfortunately, the regulator that looks after the inflation rate is very prudent and very good. A little bit of GDP, income per capita, national budget, foreign direct investment, foreign debt, unemployment rate. Peru, if you go in depth into different sectors, for example, mining, you will see that there is only 5%, if I'm correctly, of land that has been analyzed for mining. So there's a lot of still land to be explored in order for new mines. Agricultural, basically the same. We still have a lot of land to be seeded and cultivated. And you know, every time you go in depth, health, it doesn't matter actually which sector you touch. There is a lot of potential growth in any of the sectors that you choose. Now, diving into some more into business things, international agreements, free trade agreements. We have a lot of free trade agreements. The importance that people like to see not only are the free trade agreements for export import, but also the double tax avoidance agreement. So that's very not so aside of Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, and Canada, Mexico, that are part of the Americas region. We have a free trade agreement, double tax avoidance agreement with Portugal, Switzerland, and South Korea. This is important, especially if you are looking to invest into Peru in some sort, by means of buying a company or establishing a new company or doing a more regional strategy. There are some, this gives you light of certain countries that are maybe near you, that you would like to establish a holding company to look after these investments in the region or only in Peru. The second question that we have a lot are what type of entity you can establish if you need to establish one in Peru. So we put the 6 type of entities, legal entities that you can establish. The first one going up or top down, left, right. The first one, basically you find it in the stock market, companies that are being floated. The second one, the SA, is the more, lawyers like to call it the more flexible, because you can do private contracts between parts, shareholders, I mean, or even that you don't have to registry in the public registry to make them valid. You just need to sign papers, and so it's a very flexible. Lawyers like that one a lot. Then you have the SAC, that is very similar to a SA. There's more variations, but basically it's the same, just a minor variations. Then you have the SRL, that is if you are very into US, it's like a limited liability company, like an LLC. The problem, the difference between the SRL and the SA is basically that the SRL, to have your agreements valid, you have to be filed in the public registry. That may take a little bit longer, a couple of weeks. It's not immediately valid, the difference of the SA. The SC is more of partners. You see it more in lawyers firms, accounting firms, audit firms, those type of professional firms where you have professionals in establishing an entity. There you have an SC, and the SCRL is basically a variation of the latter. So this is a good scope. Commonly, we have people coming into Peru establishing SAC or as SRL. So those are the two that people like to establish when they are establishing in an entity in Peru. Okay. But by the way, if you have any questions or you want, you know, for me to clarify something, please write it or write it in the chat box, and I will address it as quickly as possible. Do we have an external requirement for audit? Mandatory only under these cases. If the bylaw says, if you are in the stock market, if you have a special regulation, if you have a request from a express request by shareholders, if the basically those are the ones that are, we don't have mandatory as you may find in other countries, mandatory after certain threshold, more wide mandatory request for audit. What you have as an accounting requirement mandatory is you have complete accounting records under IFRS. That's one. And currently all companies, entities in Peru have their year. It's ended on the 31st of December of each year. But that's for tax purposes, labor purposes, corporate law. That's the date that officially you have to close your books and everything. Tax system. Again, this is a wide idea, general idea, I mean. Income tax, 29.6, 29.5. Sales tax. Sales tax, I have to clarify, is even though it's called sales tax, it's really a value-added tax. Okay, that's the idea behind it. It's a value-added tax of 18%. ICC is specific items, products that have ICC tax, and so it varies. Commonly is used for to minimize externalities. So, for example, petrol. If you tax petrol, obviously the idea is to tax the petrol that harms more the environment. So you tax it more than the one that is less damaging for the environment. So that's the idea of the ISC, or consumption tax. Okay. Tax on financial transactions. All transactions in Peru, and more thanks to the pandemic, now the use of electronic transactions is, I would say, 89%. It's crazy. You can actually go and buy a lollipop with electronic transactions. You don't have any card, just with your mobile, and the people selling you the lollipop will have an account that you can send them right away. So pandemic has pushed us into that. All financial transactions have a very small tax. Basically, the idea of that tax is that you leave a small, like Hansel and Gretel crumbs, you know. So the money, the idea behind it is that the the agency against money laundering can look and follow where the money came from, and follow the crumbs to the original establishment. That's the idea behind that transaction, that tax. So it's very, very small. Tax on net assets. In Peru, if you have net assets over $1 million soles, roughly $300,000, if you have to up to, you pay 0. If you go over that, you pay 0.4% over your of your net taxes on the excess. Okay, on the excess. And there's another tax that is basically for industrials, that's called Senati. It's an additional. The main ones that you will see more is basically income tax, VAT, and ICC. Those are the three, and obviously the net assets, because that impacts all sectors. Those are the four taxes you will see. The financial transactions, it's there. Everybody uses it. Everybody leaves the crown. So going a little bit more into it, I think everybody knows how a VAT works. The important issue is that you can ask back for certain amounts, or use the excess amounts that you may have for against any other payments that you. So, for example, I'm going to do an example that is more illustrative. You do something that is exported, okay, or you produce, or you transform, or you extract something that is exportable. Everything that you will buy, services or machinery or people, whatever that you may need for that to happen, you will have to pay sales tax. People know, only contractors. So when you export it, because you are exporting it outside of Peru, you don't sell it to a local, you don't charge the VAT. So you pay a lot of VAT, but you don't charge any of VAT. At the end of the day, you have a lot of VAT paid that you cannot discharge it against something. So what happens is that you ask it back, or use it for other taxes that you may have to pay. So at the end of the day, that's how most countries in the world happen. In Peru, by the way, for people, general people, or income tax regime, we work like 90–95% of countries in the world under world income. Okay, Peru doesn't tax only income that is performed or made in Peru. It's world income. If you have an entity that or a person that has an income in, let's say, France, when you do your tax filing and everything, you have to put down that income and you pay. That's why on the previous presentation, I was very keen on showing the tax avoidance, double tax avoidance countries that we have. Okay, that's very important because at the end of the day, in those countries, whatever you pay here is used as a credit in the other country, and the other way around. Okay. Remember that taxes doesn't work on nationalities; it works on residency, and the general rule is in a 360 period, the last 6 months, wherever country you have been for the last 6 months, in a 360 or in a year, full year, that should be your residential tax address or tax obligation to file taxes. Okay. Transfer pricing. We had a major transfer pricing in Peru started in 2009. approximately. And we had a major overhaul in 2016, 2017, 2016, where now we embrace all OECD or international transfer pricing rules. So the similar way that transfer pricing is done in most countries in the world is the same that we do down here. The only thing that varies from country to country is the thresholds. Depending on the threshold, where you have to file the local report or the master report or the country by country, you know, that basically is that the only thing that varies from country to country. But all the methodology and how you do transfer pricing in Peru is very similar. In the region is basically the same, and it's obviously very similar to what happens in all the world. Obligation, and this is why we put that chapter of transfer pricing here. Obviously, you have vinculated parties, related parties, ownership, but also we have null taxation or non-comparative countries. That there's a list that is drawn by every tax authority. In Peru, you have that list. So any product that goes through or comes from, so just again, to put it an example, you have a product from China to Peru, but it goes through, I would say, Panama, okay, that is in the list. Because the boat goes through Panama, you have to do transfer price because it goes through a very low, or is in a country that is in the list that the tax authority in Peru has. So that's very important for that. We also have obviously beneficiary test, final beneficiary test. So you have all the ownership structures that you have to look into it, also to comply with that rules. Just to be clear, by the end of this year, it's actually starting the 1st of June, but by the end of this year, Peru is getting rid of all paper invoices, okay? There was a small group of companies, very small companies, that were still out of the scope, but now starting, if I'm correct, the 1st of June of this year, now it's mandatory for them to use the non-paper invoice. So now we have moved electronically all around. The tax authority, every filing that you do is electronically. We mentioned the accounting requirements because you also have to file your monthly ledgers to the tax authority. So it's a very paperless now. It's a very paperless process that we have in Peru on filing and everything. It's very done in a very digital way. Any questions there? Because we are on the last part of the presentation. Labor, that is also very important. We are not as flexible as we would like to in the labor legislation. Obviously, there's a big question currently with what the current ideology that we have on power. They want to make it more rigid. Nevertheless, you have private pension funds. So I'm gonna go into what's very important. You have independent social pension funds that are private. So every employee have an account that the employer give or pays their money there, and goes into a private account that is managed by a private entity or private company that runs the pension fund. We also have, aside of the 4 private pension funds, you have a one still public, I mean governmentally run public pension fund. When they started the private ones, there was an idea to actually transform this one into the same one. Currently, there are still discussions to what's going to happen. Eventually, all studies shows that it have to be like a blended, where the private pension fund give the pension, the worker, a minimum wage that may not be fulfilled by their bag of money. So the idea is to eventually get the government to actually subsidize this first ladder on or first step on the ladder, and then eventually goes. Why is this and why is that? Basically, even though we have a very low non-employable people, we are nearly 6% of non-employable, or people not employed, really. The problem is that we still have a lot of the economy as a whole still has a big chunk of it not being on a formal payroll. So you have a lot of entrepreneurs, startups, people trying to get a way of living that are not into this big umbrella that is the labor legislation. And that's basically what the discussion has always been over the last years, is that instead of trying to legislate for a very small group of workers, there's a need to actually open the legislation to make it more flexible, to have and you know, erase or take out any walls or any things that may prevent people to come in formally into the labor legislation. Once you have a big chunk of the employees or people that want to work formally established, then we can start the other discussion. But nevertheless, aside of that, maximum of 48 hours workable per week. You have various scenarios, contracts, type of contracts that you can put in. Labor legislation per se, even though this is a very, this is just a small part of it I'm trying to talk to. Please, on this issue, especially and also on the tax idea, but tax planification, but on labor thing, please, it's very important that you be properly advised. Okay, there's a lot of things depending on the sector, depending on the industry, depending on the size of the entity, depending on the regime, also depending also impacts on what type of entity you choose. So it is very, very important that you be properly advised as a whole, if you want to have people, and especially you know, people over 20 more or plus staff, local entity, please have a properly be advised on the labor legislation. It's very important. Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Or I'm very good presenter, or people are mute. I
think you are a very good presenter person.
Oh, thank you very much, Margot. Thank you very much. So basically that's it. We don't have any more to cover. We can go and talk about due diligence, or if you want to buy, financing requirements, but or people or money that if there's this is something that is not on the presentation, but I can talk to you, and it's very logical because I didn't put it in the presentation. We don't have any requirements for free flow of capital in or out. Money can come in, I mean, money can come out. The only problem if it comes in bags. But if it goes through or from banks to overseas or from other bank into Peru, there's no problem at all with free flow of capital. Okay. There is obviously some protection for national workers, so you have to go into a process if you are a non-residential Peruvian or a non-Peruvian that wants to work in Peru. Again, labor legislation, get a proper advice there. But aside of that, it's fairly easy. You don't have requirements regarding that you need, like for example, China, where a Chinese have to own a part of the company. You can have non-Peruvian companies or people owning Peruvian companies. Doesn't matter at all. So there's no issue there. You don't have a nationality requirement board, for example. You don't have to have a Peruvian on your board, mandatory by law. No? And that's it. We have a main market in the stock market. We have an alternative market, the same as in London. It's called alternative market value. So yeah, basically that's it. The ecosystem is like that. Yes, Michelle.
Thank you, Jose. A quick question with regard to payments of cash out of Peru to, say, another country. If I understood you correctly, there is no bank registration and approval required for like repatriation of cash from a Peruvian subsidiary to a ex-Peru parent.
No,
because in Brazil there is requirement to register with the bank.
Yeah, no, in Peru, unless it doesn't go through any bank, that is another issue. There is free flow of capital. Just have to go from a bank or out of a bank or into a bank.
Okay, thank you.
I will.
Are you planning to go to Miami for the Americas?
My partner is going. One of my partners is going. I'm okay. Gonna be on the other one.
Ah, yeah, in Germany. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I will be in Miami. I was hopeful to meet you.
Oh, well, look for Andres Robert. He will be there.
Andres, okay.
Yes, please. Any more questions?
No, I don't think so.
Perfect. Good.
Thank you very much, Jose Luis and Lorena, because I know Lorena worked with you. It was a very great presentation, and I liked your videos. It was very, very good. So thank you again.
Yeah, the videos were fantastic.
Yeah.
Do you contract a production company to make them, or do you make them in-house?
Lorena is the one that actually does the magic.
Wow.
I just look at it and applaud it.
Yes, Lorena makes them in TGS Sarrio?
Yes, we work with the draft inside and then all the production with agency, external agency.
Okay. Yeah, they were very, very well done. Incredible.
Yeah, it's a good job.
Well,
okay.
That's it.
Yes, so thank you, everybody. I will stop the recording.